Here are three examples of how we're going to add and subtract fractions. Our first problem, 5 divided by 3a, subtract 3 divided by 4a, we're going to look at those denominators. I notice there's no addition or subtraction in the denominator, and 3 doesn't break down, 4 does, 2 times 2, but that doesn't really help us. So we're going to try and find that common denominator. I notice they both have an a, so I'll write down the a first, and then I'll go back for the leftovers. There's a 3, and there's a 4. So those are the factors that I'm going to use as my common denominator. You notice that there are 3 factors here, but in this first fraction there are only 2 factors. So this one's missing a 4. I'll multiply both the numerator and the denominator by 4. 3 factors, 2 factors, this one's missing a 3, so I'll multiply both the numerator and the denominator by 3. Now I multiply this out before I write it down. 4 times 5 is 20. Subtract 3 times 3 is 9. And 20 subtract 9 is 11 divided by 12a. And we're done with that problem. Looking at this next one, x and y is my denominator. There's nothing common. So if I wanted to get a common denominator, I would just use everything since there's nothing common. And there's no plus sign, so I don't need to do any parentheses. This first fraction is missing the y, so I'll multiply both the numerator and the denominator by y. And the second fraction is missing an x. 8 times y is 8y, plus 3 times x is 3x. And there's no way to reduce this because in the top we have a plus sign, so if you want to keep that in parentheses so you don't make a mistake, that would be wonderful. And you can see there's nothing that reduces. Now our last example is a little bit tricky because we have a whole number plus a fraction. And it really doesn't much matter. When you're adding and you have a fraction involved, then everything should be a fraction because you need common denominators. So let's make one line, see if we can find a common denominator. There's a plus sign, so we're going to use parentheses. And there's nothing common, so I'll use that 1 and the x plus 1. Now this first one is optional, you don't need to write it, but I thought it would help us see what we're doing here. Down here we have 2 factors, and in this first fraction we only have 1 factor. So we'll multiply both the bottom denominator and the numerator by that missing factor, x plus 1. This second fraction is missing the 1, so we'll multiply both the top and the bottom by 1. Now on this line, it's best not to just copy down what you already have written, but actually multiply it out. Using the distributive property, we get 3x, and 3 times 1 is 3. There's a plus sign here, so we're going to add, and multiplying 1 times x, you get x, and 1 times negative 1 is negative 1. Now combine like terms. 3x plus x is 4x, and positive 3 subtract 1 is positive 2 divided by x plus 1. Now you're not done with fractions unless you know for sure they don't reduce. Looking at this numerator, it looks like it might factor, so we should try and do that. The first rule in factoring is factor out what's common. There's a 2 common, and that would leave me a 2x plus 1. But you notice this 2x plus 1 will not reduce with this x plus 1 because they're really not the same. So our answer that we had originally, 4x plus 2 divided by x plus 1, is a fine answer. If you want to leave it in parentheses, that's fine, just so you're tempted not to reduce, but it actually factors, so either answer would be fine. You could have your 2 times 2x plus 1 divided by your x plus 1, or what I have written there in the red box.